So once again, thank you for joining us at Night with the Experts, our monthly program. So tonight, we are really pleased to have three very interesting people, Mary Beth Brangan, James Heddle, and Morgan Peterson, who have collaborated to put out a spectacular film, which is making the tour around the country at this point. It's called San Onofre Syndrome. They're going to tell you about the film, and you'll have an opportunity to ask them questions as well and get to know them a little bit better. Next month, we will be back to the fourth week, the last Thursday of the month. We moved it this month because we're doing the International Uranium Film Festival in Chicago, beginning March 28th through April 1st. And also, nationally, there's going to be a showing of the Women of 3 Mile Island on the 28th. So there's just too many things colliding on the last Thursday of this month. But next month, we'll be back to our normal schedule. So thank you for joining us, and thanks for your patience. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, turn it over to Jan Boudart in particular, who will introduce tonight's guests. I also want to mention that we're assisted tonight by a board member, Kathleen Rude. So Jan, take it away.
Thank you. I wanted to thank Dave for that inspiring music. It's a really good example of how endless repetition will help the cultural inspiration of music. Anyway, it was a good choice because it was SOS, and that's the name of the film that our three panelists have created over a period of 12 years. They've been shooting and preparing for this production for 12 years now. Well, all three of them have been shooting, but the major part of the editing was done by Morgan. And I guess the major part of the shooting was done by James, but there are many examples of people who helped with this shooting. Now, Mary Beth and James are partners in life as well as work, and they live in Bolinas. Morgan lives in LA, and she's been involved in understanding filmmaking from the beginning. This film has won 2 major awards, and I'm going to read from the notice that we sent out about this film. San Onofre is in Southern California, probably about 30 miles north of Los Angeles, and it's a microcosm of the national problem of mismanagement of lethal radioactive waste. The film has been aired in Congress, the United Nations. It's been on PBS, ABC, CNN, and cable, and used in parliaments, universities, libraries, and by citizens organizations and NGOs worldwide. So I want to introduce Mary Beth Brangan and James Heddle, and Mary Beth's niece, Morgan Peterson. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Dave, or over to our guests.
Go to the guests.
Okay.
Beth, you're on.
Okay. Thank you so much, NEIS, for inviting us tonight. We're deeply honored, and we're also delighted to be able to talk about our film, SOS, the San Onofre Syndrome. And I want to mention that, Jan, what you were reading referred to our previous films, not this film. It hasn't been shown at the UN yet, but previous films have been. And we're very grateful to be included in the International Uranium Film Festival that NEIS is sponsoring in Chicago next week, and we hope everybody in that area can attend, because the gathering of people together in person is such an important function of holding film festivals. So concerned folks can energize each other and get together to mobilize appropriate action on these issues. and to contrast reality against the loud nuclear industry propaganda. So I'll be speaking a few minutes about the issues that we cover. Morgan will speak about the importance of storytelling, and Jim will talk about our approach to social change through filmmaking. And we're anticipating that our main characters will add their perspectives and wisdom in the discussion. The main characters in our film, of course. So 13 years ago, when Fukushima's triple meltdown began releasing the millions of curies of radioactive particles and gases into the ocean and air, we were horrified. So we then resolved to do everything we could to prevent that kind of disaster from happening here, since California's remaining reactors are on the coast in tsunami zones surrounded by earthquake faults, just like in Fukushima, Japan. So we began organizing and documenting the folks on the front line, both at San Onofre and Diablo Canyon. We then had to narrow our focus to San Onofre because the two stories were too much for one film. And now San Onofre is a microcosm of the urgent need to deal responsibly with the radioactive waste. And then Diablo Canyon, unfortunately, is becoming a microcosm of what's being called zombie nukes. And I also want to just mention that San Onofre is south of LA. It's between Los Angeles and San Diego. So Kathleen, would you mind playing our 90-second trailer that's edited by Josh Dinner that highlights some of the main points of our film?
The difficulty with nuclear power is that it produces the worst industrial waste that has ever been produced by any industry on Earth. This stuff remains dangerous for literally millions of years.
San Onofre has more complaints from employees than any other plant in the entire country.
I started to question whether or not the individuals who are actually responsible for moving 2.6 million pounds of material were the right people to do what they're doing.
We don't want this nuclear waste buried at the beach, just above the water level, 100 feet from the ocean. Who thought of this? This is crazy.
Each canister contains more radiation than was released from Chernobyl.
The atoms are unstable. They're like little time bombs.
What are you going to do when one of these canisters fails? They don't want those questions. They can't handle those questions.
We have to think of this as a permanent problem, a permanent legacy of the human race. We have to look after it.
If these canisters age to the point where they begin to fail, they're going to fail everywhere.
So thank you. So you can see that the issue of the radioactive waste in temporary containers holding waste that's going to last millions of years is a main point of our film. And another common issue that we cover is the importance of whistleblowers to counteract industry cover-ups of the criminal carelessness. And we also cover the heartbreaking environmental injustice that is experienced by the poor communities targeted to be dump sites. And that combines with the extreme risks of transporting this radioactive waste anyway throughout the nation. And we also cover the government covering up the true information about nuclear disasters and their effects, and the nuclear industry capturing of the supposed regulator, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And we show the necessity and power of informed people's actions to genuinely protect communities and to make decisions from the highest ethical standpoint. So we show all these issues, plus our call to action for the most robust interim storage possible through following the stories of our main characters, Torgan Johnson and his family, Donna Gilmore, Gary and Lori Hedrick, and Rose Gardner. And so now Morgan will speak.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, I am so glad to be here and talking about the importance of storytelling and filmmaking in spreading information, especially about something like what's going on with nuclear, which I don't think is, especially nuclear power, is in the consciousness a lot right now. It was a big summer with Barbieheimer, but that is the weapons. And I'm glad that that is getting out there more. But when we're talking about nuclear power, people who aren't already in the movement aren't really conscious of what's going on. And so I think being able to create, tell stories, and especially filmmaking, which is incredibly powerful, and it's something that is, everybody likes to sit back and watch a documentary at home, that can be used as a tool to spread the information and show, like Mary Beth was saying, what's really going on in the industry. And storytelling is a particularly important tool because it is throughout time how we as humans absorb information. And especially something as dry as nuclear power, it can be hard. It can be, as someone with personal experience, I can glaze over very easily. So if I have a story to grab onto, I'm more likely to continue and want to know more and to become involved because I've been connected to emotionally. And that is storytelling, and especially filmmaking, because it's visual, it's auditory, and it's done right. It connects emotionally. So I think it is, one of the best messages to show the reality of what's happening and get it out to the public. Our film, which was told over such a long period and went through so many twists and turns, it started out just following the local activists around San Onofre to get the plant closed because it was so, heinously mismanaged, and it had the worst safety record in the country of any plant. And there were whistleblowers, and it was just a mess. And so that's when we started filming, like Mary Beth said, after Fukushima. And we show, and that's another thing about storytelling and filmmaking, and she's mentioned it, but we show and we don't, more so than tell. And showing is so powerful because you're seeing it with, your own senses, instead of just being told, oh, they do this and they do that. No, we show them, being duplicitous. We show the regulatory being negligent. We show them constantly choosing profit over public safety, and that this conundrum, this insurmountable conundrum with the waste, is a serious, serious problem, not just at San Onofre, but everywhere. And I think by the end of the film, ultimately the only conclusion one can come to is that those in charge can't be trusted to handle this technology safely. And so I hope that with the film, we don't necessarily start out really hitting on the head that it's anti-nuclear. That was important to me because I don't want to turn anyone off. I wanted this film to be something for the layperson, for someone who's just like, oh, this sounds interesting. I had a good time at Barbieheimer, and let me watch this, and to grab them and keep them throughout the whole thing. And they walk away having been informed, now conscious of a very serious issue that the public needs to be conscious of, because without public participation, which is another main theme of our film, without public participation, we're completely screwed. We cannot trust the systems in place to make the decisions that are best for us. And this is a very serious, as everyone here I know knows, there's so many very serious and scary things out there, but nuclear is definitely one of them, and it needs to be a part of the discussion. So I think, and I hope, that our documentary contributes to that wave of informing and bringing the consciousness back to the larger public. That's my great hope for this film, that we can get it out there, and that people who aren't necessarily aren't super in, or aren't part of the movement before watching it, will come away being like, that's something that I'm going to pay attention to. That's something that I am going to make known in all the ways that we make things known: social media, calling our reps, participating in the process, because that's really scary. And I want to make sure that my family and my land and my world is kept safe from anything terrible happening. So yeah, I think that's it for me. Next, I guess, is Jim.
Okay, thank you, Morgs.
So a little personal background here. I'm trained in film production, but my main background is in sociology and social psychology. So not cinema studies. So I relied on two pioneers from different disciplines and as I searched for a way of applying film as a tool for social change, cultural and political change. One is Werner Heisenberg, a quantum physicist who originated the indeterminacy principle, which oversimplified says that introducing an observer into a situation changes the situation. And my other guide was Virginia Satir, the originator of family reconstruction therapy, which the theory and the practice showed that helping individual family members each see each other as the others saw them changed the situation and could be a healing influence on the situation. So when MB and I teamed up back in the 80s, we tested that combined approach on the Palau U.S. Congressional UN nexus. Palau had passed the world's first nuclear-free national constitution, and it was a so-called strategic trust of the U.S. under the UN trusteeship system. And the U.S. was trying to put a nuclear submarine base there, despite the nuclear-free constitution. So for a decade, we shuttled back and forth between the Republic of Palau in Micronesia and the U.S. Congress in Washington, D.C., and the UN headquarters in New York, showing video reports and also showing testimonies, individual testimonies from people involved. In those days, film reports and broadcast TV were the delivery channels. Our decade of reporting and our PBS Film Strategic Trust, and also Islands on the Edge of Time, helped protect Palau's nuclear-free constitution just long enough to prevent Palau from becoming a U.S. Cold War nuclear submarine base. So fast forward to the age of YouTube and SOS. We began using YouTube as a way of applying our approach. And the takeaway lesson was that observation plus feedback equals citizen empowerment for a social change. We found that using film in this way has three important effects. It impacts official actions and decision-making, even though it makes them uncomfortable. It also empowers engaged citizens who can see themselves shown, they're like a mirror holding up, they can see themselves as effective agents in the situation. And finally, it helps the whole unfolding process, it keeps the whole unfolding process becoming lost to collective situational awareness down the collective memory hole. Now, a main factor in the information war that's going on right now is what our friend Albert Meyer and others term the nuclear enterprise. It's one part business and one part war. The seamless integration of nuclear energy, weapons, and waste management industries that are all sharing a common infrastructure of facilities, research, training, and labor pool, allegedly overseen by regulatory agencies, quote unquote, that in fact have been captured by the very industries they are mandated to regulate. So as we're all painfully aware, this powerful enterprise, the nuclear enterprise, is in turn symbiotic and codependent with what industrial engineer Seymour Melman famously dubbed a permanent war economy, one rooted in perpetual global conflict. And then there's what we're calling the nuclear revivalism, an ideology with all the characteristics of a religious cult. One of our all-time heroes is the late, great David S. Freeman, a curmudgeon who once headed the Tennessee Valley Authority, as well as the LA, New York, and Sacramento utility districts. And he went on to shut down more reactors in his career than any other nuclear utility administrator. And as he put it in one of our interviews, you have to understand the nuclear industry and the people that run it. And I say this advisedly from his own experience. They have a religious belief in nuclear power. So facts don't interfere. You know, religion is belief. They believe in nuclear power. In conclusion, we're stoked that and encouraged that our award-winning film documentary SOS is one of a veritable swarm of new films on various aspects of the nuclear enterprise. And it's touring in the International Uranium Film Festival, which NEIS is sponsoring in Chicago next week. So please pay attention if you live in the area. That cannot help but enlarge the scope of public cognitive awareness of the multiple overlapping threats of informed democratic threats to informed democratic choice, and even to human existence itself, which is embodied by the globe-spanning nuclear industry. We're grateful to the super competent impact team of marvelous women at Mocha Media for guiding us through this complex new communication landscape. Thank all of you dedicated folks at NEIS for inviting us to speak, and for all the great and effective work your organization does in helping to spread the word. As the chant originated by the United Farm Workers El Teatro Campesino puts it, ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Thanks for listening.
Well, thank the three of you. Those were really inspiring remarks and very interesting remarks. And I'm sure our other guests here tonight are eager to hear more from you and pick your brain a little bit. In the next section, we turn it over to you, those of you who joined us tonight, our participants. And I'm going to have Jan Boudart now take over this portion of the meeting. She'll give you the ground rules on how we proceed. and how you can ask your questions or make your comments. So again, thank you, Mary Beth, James, and Morgan.
Well, thank you very much. I think that was a three-part, very inspiring introduction to the part of our program where we feature the people who are in the audience. But I did want to mention the fact that Alfred Meyer, who has spent many, many years explaining to people that the connection between the War Department and nuclear industry has been one of our experts on Night with the Expert. And so it was really nice to hear James talk about him tonight. Okay, there are some rules about participating. The first one is that this meeting will last until 9:30 p.m. I'm sorry, 8:30 p.m. Central Time and 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And for Caitlin, it'll be 10:30. She lives in Halifax. There are three ways to participate. One is you can go to the bottom of your screen and see the little icon that says reactions. If you click that, it will there will be a way to raise your hand. And that is the easiest way for us, because once you click your hand raised, you moved right to the top of the screen and we know to call on you. And the second way is to raise your hand wherever, like this, and we'll see your hand raised. And the third way is to go to the stack and write stack. I mean, go to the chat and write stack. And we'll be trying to pick those up and make sure that all the people who want to ask a question get a chance. You'll be allowed one question and one follow-up. And you will not be called on again unless there's nobody else who's asking a question. And that's, I think, the size of it. So if it's time now for people in the audience or the participants to make their comments or ask their questions, and we will field those questions to Mary Beth, Jim, and Morgan.
It must feel good to be so clear in what you've said that nobody has questions.
No,
Okay.
again, no, Gary raised.
Okay, we finally have
He's
one.
in the film and he raised his hand too. So Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. You know, I don't know why the video, that might be polite. Here I am. We are Lori and Gary.
Oh, there you are. Good.
Hi.
Once we reviewed the movies in our recent history, you know, we watched China Syndrome, we saw 3 Mile Island again recently, and SOS. And the thing that keeps striking me is it's the same story over and over and over again. They keep telling us the same playbook. They keep denying. How do we break this cycle of information that just stifles public input? You know, I mean, I think some changes are the access to documentaries like this, which wasn't previously available, and access to data that's on, you know, deep into the NRC libraries or something. Information is more available, and we can see great efforts like this you've put on. But I still wonder, from a grassroots perspective, how do we turn the tables? So how do we become the community engagement panel? How do we make things different so that it's not the same story next time someone makes a movie about this?
Mm-hmm.
Who would like to answer that? Mary Beth, Jim?
Well, you know, Morgan has told me that something that is very interesting to me, that your age group likes watching documentaries, right?
Yeah.
Now,
yes.
And it's not just like an assignment, which is, I think, that maybe some older people think of documentaries as.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was little, documentaries tended to be, dry and kind of a boring thing to watch, I guess. But now documentaries, I mean, I think that goes back to the power of storytelling. The storytelling has become such, I don't know, people are such wonderful storytellers, and a good story, if it captures you and gets you, it definitely can incite someone to want to become involved. I think that is, something that's powerful.
Do you think that the obvious bias and lack of real information out of the mainstream media is encouraging folks your age to go to documentaries for more information about
I think
what's
that's
really
possible.
happening?
I think people like to go in depth with something that's interesting, but it has to be presented in an interesting and compelling way. Like we all talk about going down like various holes. So I went down this hole because I wanted to know more, and it started with reading the Wikipedia page, and then you just go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And a documentary can give you a lot of information, and and then we have so many documentaries that are available because of all the streaming services, which I think I would love for our doc to be on one of the streaming services, because people are just like browsing. Oh, this one looks interesting. This looks interesting, especially those that are already interested in energy or environmental or something like that. The algorithm will then present it to them.
Well, I want to say that that process is underway for our film. We have Amazon and Apple, all of those are in process now.
Yeah, it's great. And I think that's where, and then getting it in film festivals, it will just bump our film further up into that menu. And then, but I think as for Gary's question was, how do we break the cycle of and that I think it's important right now to get more people informed and conscious of it, because it is not in the consciousness of my world at all. Like, people don't have any idea. And I think, the world is this really frightening place right now, and has been for some time, but it just feels overwhelming. There's so many different issues. We got to be scared of plastics and why, and there's just so many different issues that it can be like you're just adding to it, which is again why I think having a story that is compelling in a emotional way can get people on board, because, and not in a too like heavy-handed way, because it's just the world is a lot, and I find that people do go, okay, I'll just add that to the pile of things to be terrified of. And
right,
it's
right,
true. But I think especially the communities around plants need to know what's happening, and need to know about the waste, because like with San Onofre, as we show in the film, like we don't know what to do, and what they're doing is choosing these companies who aren't equipped to really store this stuff for the time period that it's going to take. So
yeah.
Well, getting more on Gary's question, you say you've had an experience kind of preaching to the non-choir by pointing out that this is not just another anti-nuclear screed. Can you talk a little bit about your experience talking to people who are not in the movement, as it were.
Right. You're talking to me, right, Jim?
And Morgan has
Oh.
some good
Morgan
stories.
has been.
Oh, excuse me.
I mean, if Gary has something to say.
I was going to read your mind, actually.
Well, I don't think we can underestimate the importance of the editor taking miles of film and turning it into a story.
Oh
And
my
that's
God.
is what compels people to keep watching. Our next questioner is Alfred Meyer, and we've been talking about you, Alfred. I hope your ears weren't ringing.
My ears have been ringing, but thank you so very much. And, first of all, I want to thank Morgan and Jim and Mary Beth for this wonderful movie. And I want to completely follow up on Morgan's comments. I think one of the important things of film is it engages the emotions. You know, when we have a lecture and we talk about the facts and figures and we need to know the facts and figures, that doesn't typically engage our emotions. And a film engages the emotions, and the emotions are what drives people. So thank you. I'd like to try to take a stab at answering Gary's insightful question about how can we have a different outcome. And it has to do with some of the work I've done. I've published a piece in the Progressive magazine titled "It's All About the Bomb," how civilian nuclear power is the cover story for nuclear weapons and the nuclear navy. To me, and so I invite you, all of you on this call, to both read the article, and it's got links in it, but also to try this on as kind of like a format or a outlined to understand things in, because to me, when I look through this viewpoint, it all makes sense. The purpose is nuclear weapons, and the purpose is the nuclear navy with which to deliver them. Small modular reactors are not for Topeka, Kansas, I'm sorry to say. They are for nuclear reactors. I mean, they're for nuclear submarines and nuclear-powered aircraft carriers. I just found out that the aircraft carrier Enterprise, which is moored not too far from me in New York City here, was powered by 6 reactors in one boat. But anyway, the purpose of the nuclear enterprise is those 2 things, period. All this talk about climate change, it's just the cover story to win public approval.
That's right. Yeah.
They care about waste. They don't care about cost. They don't care about, sacrificing peoples and areas in order to do this. None of that matters. We have compelling arguments in all those cases, as your movie presents, but none of that matters. So anyway, that's my suggestion to try to help us move forward to a safer and sounder world, is to really confront head on that nuclear reactors, and oh, by the way, I'd offer this taking of language, we don't call them nuclear power plants, we call them nuclear reactors. Plants are green growing things that are good and we like. Reactors are what split atoms and cause the problems. But anyway, I offer that for as we oppose this, to really identify what it's for, because otherwise we hit the target. I mean, I have a bookcase full of books that hit the target, that show it can't solve climate change, it's too expensive, it's this, that, and the other, but those targets don't matter. So we hit the target bullseye, but so what? So my suggestion is we need to really hit the nail on the head. But thank you so much for this conversation and for the wonderful film you've put together, and to NEIS and everybody else on the call.
Thank you, Alfred. We're going to call on Diane. Good to see you, Diane. And would you please make your comment or ask your question?
Yes, I was in contact with Jim and Mary Beth throughout some of the production, and thought it would be good to hear, if you're willing to share, the process that you use to juggle with the reality that there's nothing really good to do with the waste. And then, I mean, how did you come up with what you came up with, because you were facing the impossible, and you don't pretend to give an answer in the end, but you are dealing with it and you're starting conversations. And so I wanted to give you the chance to maybe tell us how you approach that, when you're talking to Rose on one hand in Texas, and then to people who live right at San Onofre and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were inspired by Gordon Edwards' articulation of the concept of rolling stewardship, and taking this a bite at a time, short-term storage. What can we do immediately if we had the political will and mustered the expense that, or the funding, which I think could happen. I mean, California is a wealthy place. It's not a problem, really. And so Donna found that the Swiss Zweilag facility was a model of robust containment and having a hot cell or a dry handling facility right on site, which we think needs to happen at every reactor site, so that it's possible to manipulate the waste and take these containers that have been welded shut, so you can't check inside to see if the fuel has degraded to the point where it needs to be to not even be moved. It is something that I think has to be set up at, ideally at every site, and watched over, carefully monitored, and after it's repackaged from the thin canisters holding 37 assemblies to, don't glaze over, Morgan. This is
no, I was just thinking how you would say over and over again when we were in the process that you were like the least worst solution.
Right.
The least worst one, which I thought.
And also this shit, it has to be, these steps one would think must be taken no matter what the long-term resolution of the repository question is. It seems to me that just to allow us to buy time to have something else better developed, we have to take steps right now to ensure safety right now, and repackage these huge thin-walled 5/8 inch thick canisters with 37 assemblies into smaller containers of thick cast that aren't subject to cracking, stress corrosion cracking, and that can be monitored and that can be repackaged and repaired over time.
There's different points of view on this issue. There are many who favor deep geological repository being developed, or more than one even. And there are those who favor deep borehole sequestration, so-called. But in order to even get there, if it ever happens, you do need an interim process that is reliable, not what's called, so at the moment called centralized or consolidated interim storage, which if it's not handled right, can easily turn into every little place that turned into a national nuclear waste dump. So what we want to do is say, let's have a both and solution. If you're totally wedded to the idea of deep repositories, at least in order to get there, we need to implement some version of the Swiss method. So they're not antagonistic to each other, they're complementary. And that's why we want to get the discussion going, not just as an argument, but as a genuine, fact-based, evidence-based search for solutions.
Well, I took away that stop making it was the only thing to do.
God damn it.
Oh, sorry.
And I think
we forgot.
no, no, but you got into the dirty details of what to do with what we've already made, which we have to face.
Mhm.
But I appreciated the message of stop making it,
Yeah.
which came out at several points, and also the folly of the false centralized interim storage so-called solution, which would only make the problem worse. So I appreciated that. And I'm looking forward to seeing it again.
Thank you. Thanks, G.
Thanks for doing it.
Well, you've
Well,
been
thanks for all your work over
right.
the years.
You've been my mentor.
You're our mentor, and we wouldn't even gotten into this if it weren't for you.
Yeah.
So it's your own fault.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you for those answers. And I just wanted to say that Gordon Edwards and his rolling stewardship really originated with the Anishinaabe and Iroquois declaration in 2016. And I don't think he would begrudge the idea that this was where the whole idea of rolling stewardship got started. But he was the one who elaborated it and made it more modern, more, actually publicized it.
Stewardship versus abandonment.
Oh yeah, no, but you cannot abandon it. You're never going to be able to forget it. You've got to pay attention to it in perpetuity. Okay, Kathleen, please ask your question.
Great, thank you all. And so one comment I'll say that Joanna Macy, who has been involved with anti-nuclear work for a long time, is also one of the founders of this idea of nuclear guardianship and being able to say we need to acknowledge the waste and treat it where it's at and as much as possible keep the community aware and informed about the dangers of this waste and how do we care for it as you're talking about in this film and as Gordon Edwards is promoting. And so but this other idea of how important it is for us to be keeping this issue in front of people and saying how do we care for it safely is as close as possible to where it is and minimizing the risk to other communities. And so wanted to add her voice into this conversation and want to thank you all for this powerful movie. And I'm really struck by the length of commitment that is required to make a documentary. When I hear that you folks started this, when after Fukushima, and so the many years it takes to make a quality documentary like this, and so agree, Morgan, as you spoke so beautifully about the power of storytelling. This is the way to take something that is dry and scary and who cares into waking us up and saying we need to care about this. So I'm curious about the process of making a documentary and keeping the momentum going over so many years to craft something as powerful as this. And so what's involved and how do you, and also curious about how you get the resources that allow you to do this work, because clearly you have to make a living and feed yourselves and to spend this long making such a powerful product. So I'm really interested in how the process is for you.
Oh, thank you, Kathleen.
Well, for one thing, we're looking at a I guess about 30 hard drives of recorded historical material that had to be boiled down into a story.
97 minutes.
Yeah, and so
Morgan.
but also managing that amount of material, cataloging it and having it accessible at your fingertips is a big part of the process. The other part, I guess, is that we stuck to it because, well, we had a history of working for over a decade on Palau, so we were used to long storytelling,
long-term,
story,
yeah.
documentation. But also, we have been blessed with a number of funders, but one chief funder who has stuck with us through thick and thin, and to that, that support requires a lot of credit for what we're doing. We consider our funders partners in the process, and we're really grateful that they've stuck with us through this long, arduous creative process, co-creative process.
Very, very grateful. I mean, I feel like we've been so blessed by our major funder.
Yeah, very nice. Well,
Mary
thank
Beth
you.
and Jim are amazing. What they do, and the energy that they are able to keep at it, and the blessings that they are able to pull in. I mean, really extraordinary, because I personally almost was out several times. But they never wavered, and we're always like, this is what we're doing. And it was amazing, and it is amazing. I'm all in constant awe of them and their commitment to the issues that they focus on. It's really extraordinary.
Oh, thanks. Well,
Thanks,
it's the
Mark.
most.
Thanks for sticking in there.
Yeah, thank you so much for being willing to go through the hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage.
And at the same time, mother two babies.
Yeah, she just has two
Woman.
babies. During this whole
Which I'm gonna have to leave soon. I don't know if you can hear them screaming. They're screaming in the background.
But it's the most fun there is, actually, to do this work. If it's the purpose of your soul, it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Even as crazily dire as the situation is. And I want to say to you, Alfred, I wanted to put the link to weapons in our film, but it got nixed by Morgan. Too much for people to.
You got to stay focused.
Yes.
And we already had so much. There was so much. There was literally hundreds of hours of footage. So it could have been several different films.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Our next questioner is going to be Stephanie, but I wanted to bring to people's attention from the chat a lady from Hawaii who made a very interesting comment in the chat, and she mentioned a person named Don May. And I think if you get a chance, and we will save the chat and send it to everybody here, be sure to pay attention to Sherry Pollack and her friend Don May.
Oh, I called Don in the making of this. I tracked him back to Hawaii. Thanks, Jan.
Okay. Well, anyway, Stephanie, what's your question? And let's move on.
It's good news that SOS will be streaming soon. Some people I invited, I also shared the 90-second trailer, and they said, well, where's the link to see the movie? So now I can tell them it'll be soon. You had mentioned a couple of things on the PBS station in the 80s. One was strategic trust, and I couldn't capture enough the other one that you mentioned, because I find that PBS is not really, they don't give enough information about the horribleness of nuclear reactors. So what was the other one that you said you did back in the 80s?
It was the Islands on the Edge of Time. We actually did several.
Oh,
But
okay.
those were the two that were sponsored by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But in the case of our second film, they kind of censored it because they were afraid it would offend too many people. So they limited the broadcast after we had it done. The Strategic Trust was produced back in the halcyon days of PBS and CPB, when they were really into documentary work. In fact, we were told after Strategic Trust that just give us something on the back of an envelope for your next film and we'll fund it. But that attitude very rapidly
They got fired for that. That's
evaporated, and those were the dark days of public broadcasting set in.
So yes, so it was Islands. What was the rest of?
Islands on the Edge of Time.
Islands on the Edge of Time.
Okay.
We can send you a link to it.
It was that was toured nationally by the Margaret Mead Film Festival.
I think the Oppenheimer film winning all these awards, it will bring people into realization of how awful the bomb and all that is involved with it is. I mean, it's radiation exposure, it's weapons, it's all of the above. So I'm hoping that all this will impact soon before their attention span goes away.
Yeah, right.
That's all. Thank you.
Thank you
Okay,
for your questions.
Yes. Thank everybody for their questions, and the discussion is really, really interesting. Dave?
Thanks. Yeah, first off, Jim, I want to thank you for your, not just yours, but I guess the team's attitude about film. I've always felt that film in the 21st century is replacing the tribal fire, where people would come after the hunt, or they would reinforce the mores and the important pieces of the tribe and convey that core messaging. And I think that's the role of film in our era. My question and comment it's a morph of two things that you've touched on already. Gary's point about, how do we not repeat it? But also, I was glad to hear that you're going to look into other ways of publicizing the film. You mentioned Apple and Amazon. I was going to suggest something like Nebula, which I think is a service that documentarians and artists post to. So I don't know if you're familiar with them, but
no, that's good to know.
There are a lot of little ones out there where folks like you can form a network and a family and really push stuff. And I'll be glad to forward that to you. But that morphs into my comment or question. 2 years ago, we were, dancing on the tabletops when Don't Look Up came out. We have been trying desperately to get this idea of climate change out to people. And we thought, oh, finally, the ship has arrived. And then the Titanic hit the iceberg. I mean, who even hears about it anymore? And that was a stellar cast. I think it won an Academy Award or two. I can't remember exactly. And we adopted that as a meme we were putting into all of our presentations and our publicity. And now it's evaporated. So my question is more from a filmmaker's point of view than the facts and figures point of view that I think Gary was touching on, is how will you, or how does one take a film like this and make sure it doesn't end up like Don't Look Up did, just evaporating into the film ether that nobody refers to anymore?
Well, we're working with, I'm sorry, were you complete? We're working with a team of folks from Mocha Media, and we're up on already a video on demand. Eventive is the platform name. If you go to our website, San Onofre Syndrome.com, there'll be links to how you can watch the film. And it's we're going to be putting it on like 5 different platforms. So it's already up on one, it's already up on Vimeo. And Vimeo has a video on demand service too. I wasn't aware of that.
And we'll be having a period of viewing for free coming up.
Thank you for remembering that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very soon. The week before Earth Day will be a whole week where people can watch it free. And so we'll be putting out that message.
And didn't you also work on an agreement with Mike Carberry of Sierra Club?
Oh my goodness, yes.
You want to talk about that a little?
Sure. Mike Carberry and Don Safer are have organized a Sierra Club film series, and they're showing Heidi Huttner's film Radioactive, The Women of 3 Mile Island, and our film next. Heidi's, I think, was already shown, and she's having her big panel discussion on the 28th of this month. And then in June, our film will be shown June 10th, or it'll be available for free screenings June 3rd to the 10th, and then we'll have our panel discussion on the 10th.
And then there's Atomic Bamboozle is also part of their program.
Right, which is wonderful. And
we're glad to meet Jan, the producer of that film, and Jan Harkin, and we're talking about having double bills and cooperating and spreading the word.
With Atomic Bamboozle in our film. But I don't know the answer to how you prevent it from going down the memory hole. Dave,
but I think I have something to say about that.
Oh, good.
Don't Look Up, which I thought was a really great movie. You know, and I don't know if it has necessarily faded, but it definitely contributed to the consciousness. But I think climate change and an allegory for climate change, you know, that is very much in the consciousness. Like, it's something, but it's so big. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier, is that there is this big pile of shit that we're all, excuse my language, that we're all like, there's a lot going on here. And I think Don't Look Up contributed to that, but it didn't give any solutions except to not, you know, not go down that path of being blind and just allowing. I mean, it was a very, anyway, it was a good movie. I recommend anyone watching it. I think it's on Netflix. But I feel like we're doing something so different, which is just trying to get a message out there that isn't that well known, and add that to the consciousness and of some on a larger level where people can be like, okay, now I have this in my consciousness now. I know that this is something to be aware of, and hopefully I can make decisions. I mean, if you can get behind it and become an activist, that's amazing. But if you're just an average person, hopefully it can help contribute and inform decision-making on just those like minute everyday decisions of, you know, I'm not going to support a new power plant starting in my neighborhood. And wait, what is that power plant doing with its waste? And did they just say that they're going to be moving waste through my backyard on the train track? You know, it adds to that consciousness of going, wait a minute, hold on, I know about this. I watched a movie once. And I know I know what they're telling me isn't quite right. And that's where I think, and it's small and it doesn't have the impact of the iceberg, but over time, I think it can make a difference with those little decisions, you know, and that little bit of going, especially like we said at the beginning, there's a whole like tsunami of films coming out. And the more people watch those, and the more that they're on one of the larger streaming services, that they watch one film, then there's going to be the algorithms like, hey, watch this film, and hey, you should watch this film. And so, and people love, and if they're interested, they get more and more and more informed. So I don't know. I just feel like they're kind of different effects, and because it's a different subject matter, because global climate change is something that is so, and we are conscious of it way more so than anything to do with nuclear, anything to do with, you know.
But I agree with Alfred's comment that we've been programmed to think that way, and to funnel us to the nuclear power as a solution. I want to also say that videos take on a life of their own sometimes. We just last week showed a film that we shot in 1999, and it was still relevant on another issue. You never know. And it's been moved all over the world and has been seen thousands and thousands of times. And we hardly did anything to promote it. So, you know, if it's a useful film, it'll find its way.
Okay, thank you very much. And for the answers and for the questions. Our next questioner was to have been Linda, but oh yeah, Linda, you go next, please, because you had your hand up for a long time, and go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks, Mary Beth and Jim. I'm thinking about I'm thinking about, well, of course, the waste at San Onofre, and then of course the waste at Diablo Canyon. And I'm thinking about and the fact that the US government is giving, I think it's $1.6 billion to various groups to find a site for consolidated interim storage. And there's, a group around here has gotten a grant of 1.3 million or something like that to go out and talk to various communities and tribal communities, of course, to try to persuade them to take the waste in CIS. And so there's this big effort by our federal government to do that now, because if they don't do it, they know they're going to be in trouble because they don't know where they're going to put all this waste, right? But if they can move it a little ways, then, oh, wow, it'll be okay, right? So the thing is that I think most legislators are completely ignorant about this. I don't think they know a thing about it. And so I was thinking, while I've been listening to this discussion about, I wonder if you would ever think of distributing your film, say, to all this people in the California state legislature. Send them a link for free. Because they probably know a little bit about this thing, but I'll guarantee you, they don't have a clue about how immense the problem is.
Yeah.
But
their attention spans.
Yeah. Well, that's a problem for sure. But
or you want to make it
ever,
I say our intention is to make it as widely available as possible. So that's an idea we should definitely explore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah, I want them to understand that this isn't a problem. This is a problem that will affect the entire world, you know, and starting here with the state of California.
Mhm.
And with this CIS thing, I just think it's such a big red herring, you know, to like look at the monkey, you know, deflect attention away from the problem that really exists.
Mhm.
Anyway, thank you so much for making that film. What a
Mhm.
deal.
Oh,
Yeah.
thanks.
A red
Susan.
herring is a good way of putting it. I'm
Well-
sorry, everyone. I have to go.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Morgan.
Morgan. Really appreciate it.
Come again.
Bye, Morgan.
Happy mothering.
We're
Okay,
so
calling on Carolyn Treadway. Go ahead and ask your question, Carolyn.
Okay, my question is now about sort of out of phase, or my comment, but I too, like Kathleen Rood, had wanted to speak about nuclear guardianship. And there's a little bit more that I'd like to add to what she said. And that is when Joanna Macy and her husband Fran and some friends were starting this project a century ago, they had an emphasis on the spirituality of the problem. And they conceived of nuclear guardianship as a way to watch the waste. So don't bury it, don't forget it, have it out here, to watch the waste, the way Vestal virgins took care of the altars, you know, a millennia ago, or how many, whatever. And that it would be a sacred task to do that. And we can't go to our legislatures and say, hey, we have a sacred task for you. That won't work. But it's been meaningful to me to have that in my consciousness and in my mind and heart as I've worked on nuclear for so many years. It's a sacred task. And the way the only way that it's going to be watched for millennia is that it's going to be very important, like sacred things are. So that's my addition.
Thank you, Carolyn. You know, I worked with Joanna during that time. And the first time I heard her articulate the concept, I burst into tears because I knew that was what we needed to do. That was way back in the early 90s, I think.
Yeah, I think.
And awareness of the spiritual dimension of this issue is part of what has fueled our stick-to-itiveness.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's a, you know, it's a modern spiritual path to address this issue, which is significant for all humanity.
And I also appreciate the learning, as I have from many of the knowledgeable people who are actually here, Diane DeRigo and Gordon Edwards and others over the years about the mechanics of taking care of it. So we don't have to have a vague spiritual attitude. We can actually take our spiritual purpose and impetus and apply it in solid ways to safeguard this.
Thank you. Thank you for all you've done and will do.
Oh, thanks, Carolyn.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. And our next questioner is Janice Wilson from Canada. You're on mute, Janice. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. I just want to say that I really, really appreciated the movie and the documentary, sorry. And it just strikes me as so bizarre that nuclear could be used as an excuse or as something that's going to make the climate crisis better. I mean, I find it so totally bizarre.
Yeah.
And when I saw the documentary, I'm from Ontario and we are going nuclear crazy here with the federal government and the provincial government. And I'm just so glad that this is being brought out. And I was so happy to see Dr. Edwards in it, because I think he's wonderful. I didn't expect to see him in the documentary, and there were so many things there that I cherished, like knowing all those I guess radionuclides that come out of your average reactor, and those, and somebody in the chat was saying, could Dr. Edwards say something? Oh, he's got his hand up. Okay.
Oh, good. There he is.
Thank you so much. It was amazing documentary. Thank you.
Thank you, Janice.
Okay, that's really nice. But I think that before we call on Gordon, we're going to call on David Silverman. He's had his hand up marginally longer. So David, please ask your question.
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was struck by the discussion that touches on in the movie on guardianship. Thank you. I also spent much of the day watching the nuclear summit live from Brussels of the industry consolidation globally that's occurring. And they're, of course, charged up on steroids right now. And I wonder if you have some thoughts about, this is something about the narrative that occurs when great ideas, both the guardianship, I was part of Natural Guard a long time ago that had some similar notions and ideas. But we also have a nuclear priesthood that's wedded to the industry. And the industry is finding its way to that. Finland was very clear in their presentation that they have the solution to waste. Thank you. And they gratefully passed it on to the rest of the world to pursue reprocessing and SMRs and everything else using that waste or not, as the world sees fit. That is the leadership of capitalist and otherwise nuclear industries. So I guess my question is, these are how things get co-opted and changed in time. There are the use of environmental justice, for instance, in all of this discussion by industry at this point, is an indication of how easy it is, unfortunately, to co-opt what ought to be perhaps sacred things. I'm wondering, and this is a question for media, right? How to tell stories when the same symbols and signifiers get captured by folks who tell their story with a lot more money using your symbols and critique than you're able to with resources, at least in time to catch up with them. So we have whack-a-mole about ideology, as it were. So I'm wondering if you have some thoughts about this, the co-optation of the guardianship, the notion of nuclear priesthood, which has been around for a long time, and how to make that distinction to people that there are there's a form of the sacred which can be pursued in this that is not going to be the solution industry offers.
Do you want to say anything to that?
Well, we're in an information war of competing narratives, as I mentioned, all of which want to be seen as the absolute truth, and all the rest of the perspectives dismissed as conspiracy theory or nonsense. And so realizing that we are in an information war, which is asymmetrical, really, as you pointed out, is important, an important first step, an important awareness to have as we participate in this inescapable information war. How successful we'll be remains to be seen, but we're doing what we can and hoping that it adds up to ultimately to an effective approach.
And I take heart because there are so many films this year coming out about with our movement's caring point of view.
You know,
I mean,
think I like to see it as a sign of a gradually shifting public consciousness, and I hope that's true.
Thank you very much. And I also want to thank David for going to that meeting from Brussels and watching it. That is that is really to be congratulated. And I wanted to let people know that the film SOS is going to be shown in Chicago on April 1st at 2 p.m. at the Evanston not in Chicago, at the Evanston Public Library. So that's the time we're showing the film, is April 1st at 2 p.m. in Evanston. And I'm calling on Gordon. We've been waiting for you to have something to say, Gordon.
Yay.
Yeah, yay.
Thank you, Gordon, because I know it's late for you.
Oh, it's not that late. I usually stay up pretty late. I just wanted to make 3 points. Number one, there's a lot of mystification, and mystification leads to inaction. When people, there's a saying in mathematics, I'm a mathematician, that a manager would rather live with a problem he can't solve than accept a solution he doesn't understand. And in a way, nuclear waste is something that people don't want to deal with in any way politically, because they don't feel they understand it. And one of the things that's important to realize is that normally when we use the word waste, we mean leftovers. Like, for example, you make a pattern, you cut out the cloth, and the scraps of material that are left over, that's the waste. Well, that's not the case with nuclear waste. These are things that did not exist at all before you started the reactor. They're created inside the reactor. So in fact, they shouldn't be called nuclear waste exactly, but nuclear poisons that are created inside the reactor that never were there. And that's one thing that politicians don't understand. And so when you talk about nuclear waste, their eyes tend to glaze over a little bit because they know that they don't quite understand it. So that's one point. The second point is that whereas we regard it as dangerous waste that must be sequestered to protect health and safety, the nuclear industry regards it as two things different from that. They regard it, number one, as a public relations problem. It's basically an obstacle to them continuing to make more waste. They don't want to stop making the waste. So even though they give people the impression that the underground storage would be wonderful because you'd get rid of it, on the contrary, they just want to clear the deck so they can keep making more. So to them, getting it underground is simply a license to continue. And and there's a second aspect to that, and that is that whereas we regard this as toxic waste, which it is, they regard it as a resource because it has plutonium in it, and they want to get that plutonium out, whether they say so overtly or not. Before they bury that stuff underground, they want to dissolve that waste, demolish the fuel assemblies in order to get the plutonium out. And in the process of demolishing the fuel assemblies, which is called reprocessing, they're going to release a lot of radioactive materials. And so you have to realize that there's a fundamental disconnect between the way the industry looks at this situation and the way we look at it. And the third point is that one has to disabuse people of the idea that the actual fuel is the waste. It's not the fuel that's the waste. It's not the spent fuel that's the waste. The spent fuel is the container of the waste. And the waste products there's hundreds of them, or at least dozens. Even after a long time, thousands of years of storage, there's still dozens of radioactive poisons inside those fuel bundles. And when people look at the fuel bundles, they say, well, those are not going to come back to bother us. They're too big. They're not the problem. The problem is it's like a glass bottle containing poison. You break the bottle and the poison escapes. If these fuel bundles are damaged, then you get releases of radioactive materials. And that's what people don't understand either. I think that when you deal with people, including politicians, be a little patient with them and if they don't immediately respond to your point of view, because they don't share your point of view. And I think it takes a little time and a little effort to explain to them what we're really talking about, because they do not know that. It's not in their education. It's not in their political background. Why should they know that? the industry has been telling them all along that, oh yeah, it may be a problem, but we know exactly what to do with it, which is not true. So the politicians are easily persuaded because they tend to say, well, these guys are the experts. They must know what they're talking about. What they're failing to recognize is that these people have a conflict of interest. It's in their interest to minimize the problem and to treat it as a public relations problem. And they persuade the politicians to that point of view. That's all I wanted to say. And I would like to, again, congratulate the filmmakers for an excellent documentary. There's going to be a documentary coming out later this year. In fact, it's starting to be shown now at film festivals. I don't know how good it is because I haven't seen it myself. It's called Atomic Reaction, and it's about the $2 billion radioactive cleanup that's going on in the town of Port Hope, Ontario. These are also very good stories to share with people, because people don't realize that hundreds and hundreds of homes have been contaminated and have had to be either demolished or stripped down and rebuilt because of radioactive contamination due to the nuclear industry. These stories are good for people to know because it takes it out of the abstract into the daily life. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. If there's time, I wanted to just add a couple of things. Just today, there was an article about a turnkey nuclear reactor that Amazon bought so that they can power their data centers. And the data centers are all over, now, and they require so much energy. And that's another reason that the nuclear reactors are being drooled over by the corporations. The artificial intelligence and the Internet of Things requires enormous energy, and Bitcoin mining, and of course the space program. They want it for the space program too. I can't believe how many uses they've figured out for this.
It always makes me think about our brain and how much energy the brain takes compared to other organs. That now these data centers and things like that are using a tremendous amount of energy, and we don't realize, but our brain also uses a tremendous amount of the energy that we get into our bodies. It's kind of an analogy. I wanted to talk about the literary references that are in the chat. Dave put one in from The Lord of the Rings, and he put one in from A Christmas Carol, and Gordon put one in from The Lord of the Rings. And I think people really ought to look at the chat and maybe go to those references.
Jan, will you be saving the chat?
Oh, Dave is really dependable about saving the chat, and he also sends it to all the people who come.
Oh,
so
great.
everybody will get the chat.
Thank you. Thank you.
I wonder if
Gordon has his hands up too.
What? Oh,
Gordon has his hand up.
Did you want to say something else, Gordon?
Yeah, I just wanted to say about what was said regarding Amazon and the need for all this electricity. The point is they're not using nuclear power, they're using electricity. Electricity doesn't matter where it's produced. You don't need nuclear power to produce electricity. The only thing that actually requires nuclear fission, there's only one application of nuclear fission where nuclear fission is actually needed, and that is nuclear weapons. They have to absolutely rely upon uranium and plutonium. Otherwise, there are no nuclear weapons of any description. However, electricity can be produced in countless different ways, and isotopes, medical isotopes, can be produced in countless ways as well. You don't need nuclear reactors for either one of those things. So I think that it's important not to fall into the trap of thinking that this is an excuse for nuclear. On the contrary, renewables are not only 3 times cheaper at least than nuclear, but they're also 4 times faster to deploy, which means that you could build 12 times as much renewable energy as you could nuclear with the same money and the same time. And also the renewables not only do not produce long-term waste, toxic waste, but they also pay themselves back much quicker. So that the return on investment is a matter of a few years, and then you can use that money to build more renewables. With nuclear, even when it does start paying its back after maybe 10 years or more of construction, then a lot of the money that it does produce, generate, has got to be set aside for waste disposal and for decommissioning, and it's not available for reinvestment in other energy sources. So I think that one has to not shy away from these kind of arguments, but try and make them simple. If people are interested, I could just read you this short passage from Lord of the Rings that I have on my website. Should I do that, or should we leave it for another time?
Well, it is 8:30, and it's our guests, James and Mary Beth, that will decide if we're going to continue.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah, let's hear
Go
it.
for it. That's what I thought you'd
Okay,
say.
this is from the Council of Elrond, which is a chapter in Lord of the Rings. And this is what it says. 2 things only remain for us to attempt, to send it over the sea or to destroy it, said Glorfindel. But Gandalf has revealed to us that we cannot destroy it by any craft that we here possess, said Elrond. And they who dwell beyond the sea would not receive it. For good or for ill, it belongs to us. It is for us who still dwell here to deal with it. Then, said Glorfindel, let us cast it into the deeps. In the sea it would be safe. Not safe forever, said Gandalf. There are many things in the deep waters, and seas and lands may change, and it is not our part here to take thought only for a season or for a few lives of men, or for a passing age of the world. We should seek a final end to this menace. Then, said Aristor, there are but 2 courses, as Glorfindel has already declared, to hide it forever or to unmake it, but both are beyond our power. Who will read this riddle for us? None here can do so, said Elrond gravely. At least none can foretell what will come to pass if we take this road or that. But it seems to me now clear which is the road that we must take. I think that it's really interesting to compare the fascination with nuclear as similar to the possession of the ring. In the Ring of Power, when people put it on their finger, they think they possess the ring, but in fact, the ring possesses them. And the point is that whereas the hobbits in Lord of the Rings want to destroy the ring as a danger, the Dark Lord wants to get the ring as a source of power. And that's exactly the 2 points of view that I was referring to earlier. Whether you regard it as an evil that must be destroyed or a source of great power that you should possess, that's really where what it comes down to.
Good point. Thank you for making it.
Thank you. Just to clean up a couple of little matters here. Joni put something in the chat, and I'm wondering if Joni's still here, if you could just quickly tell us what your chat entry was about. Do you mind, Joni?
Hi, good evening. I'm Joni Ahrens. I'm with Concerned Citizens for Nuclear Safety, based in Santa Fe, New Mexico, 25 miles downwind of Los Alamos National Lab. I wrote in the chat that I hope that James and Mary Beth would add the New Mexico State legislative members to their list of providing a link for people to be able to watch your movie, because right now we understand that Senator Heinrich, there was a brief bill that said that in the Senate that supported the state law about Holtec having to get permits. And somehow the bill got loaded down with other things and it didn't pass. And so there needs to be more education in New Mexico to support the state law that requires Holtec to get state permits. If they get, do they have their license? Yeah.
Does that refer to the mineral rights, the underground rights?
No, it's state permits such as groundwater discharge permits, air permits, construction permits, to be able to build it. Most of it's on the surface, would be on the surface.
We would be delighted to do that. Thanks, Joni, and thank you so much for all your good work.
And if you can send us appropriate links, we'd appreciate it.
Oh, of course, of course. And
Shannon?
thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you for your beautiful documentary. I'm so grateful. And it was just for the general audience. I was at the International Uranium Film Festival in Window Rock 2 weeks ago. And during the awards ceremony, the love and spiritual support that came off the stage was so thick. I had never been in an environment like that where we were all blessed by the coming together. And I would make one plug for Klaus Biegert's new movie or documentary about Hans Peter Duhr. It's an amazing film. Klaus put together a map to show where the different people were in the time of the development of the bomb. And he had little pieces on his map, and he would move like Teller over here to Livermore, and then, Teller in Europe, and just to show someone who's brand new to this issue how the pieces fitted together. And Sue Duhr was sitting there with him, and she added to the conversation. It was a brilliant piece of work, and I recommend doing that. But thank you for the question.
Joni, do you want to tell us who Fitz Harwood is?
Fizz worked with Joanna Macy and with Chellis Glendenning and the others with the guardianship program. And she put together a slideshow where she showed sacred buildings around the world in all different shapes and sizes, and then similar nuclear power plants to show that they were both sacred and that we have to take care of them. And it's just, it was so powerful because at the time I was a young activist and I didn't understand. It was a real eye-opener in terms of what the possibilities are. And at the time we talked about that we need to start wearing monks' robes to the public meetings, which, yeah. So thank you.
Okay, and just two other things. David Lockbaum made a comment in the chat, which I hope you'll look at. And Gordon's debate with Edward Teller, I've watched it a couple of times. It is really interesting. So yeah. I also recommend that when you get the chat, take a look at it, because there's a lot of really interesting stuff in there. So I do believe that we're about 15 minutes over time, and I'm going to turn this back to Dave Kraft. So Dave, don't forget to save the chat for everybody. And would you like to close the meeting?
Thanks, Jan. I guess I would just like to start off again, thanking you, Mary Beth and James, for joining us tonight. And of course, when we get the chance, we'll thank Morgan again. If you would stick around after we close the meeting and turn off the recording, we just have a few things we'd like to discuss with you. Also, I'd like to just see if you have a last word you want to leave us with before I go into my closing remarks.
Well, we want to thank you for the honor of inviting us to this conversation. I'm personally impressed that it accommodated so many points of view, and useful insights. So thank you for creating this event.
Yeah, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, we hope you come back, either as participants or as for your next film. We'll get you in. Okay, so I'm going to do a little crass publicity here. Hope you don't mind it, folks. But a reminder that if I can get this up right. One moment. There we go.
While you're doing that, oh, okay.
The International, you've heard about it a lot tonight, the International Uranium Film Festival. It is going to Asheville, North Carolina, I believe this weekend, and then next week we'll be arriving in Chicago. We've got it for 5 days, and as Jan pointed out, we are showing SOS on Monday, April 1st. So certainly those of you in the Chicago area, we'll hope you join us. And those of you not in the Chicago area, book your tickets, get here quick. Our economy needs your help. So feel free to join us at any of the sessions. Night with the Experts next month will take place on Thursday, April 25th. That is the fourth Thursday of the month. And we don't actually have a program set up yet, but it is the day before the Chernobyl anniversary. So there's a high probability you can expect something that deals with the 38th anniversary of the Chernobyl disaster in some form or other. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. We hope when you come next time, you will bring someone with you. We want to be like the amoeba in the Petri dish, where we keep replicating and, you know, having more and more people attend these kinds of things. And as you see, it's a little bit different than others. I mean, what other presentations have you been at in the last 2 years that quoted Lord of the Rings and the Christmas Carol on the same agenda? So a little bit different. So thank you all again. We wish you well. And again, thank you, Mary Beth and James. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, thank you.